Hey there, Nicole Holland here. Super excited to have you back with us. Today, I'm joined by my friend Mark Asquith. In 2005, he decided that he no longer wanted to work the 9 to 5 for people with whom he had little in common, so he quit. Since then, he's gone from freelancer to multiple business owner and thought leader, having worked with the UK's Ministry of Defence, the NHS, and some of the UK's biggest corporations and financial institutions. Shortly after building his first successful business, Mark found himself facing a destructive burnout. It was through that experience that Mark opened his eyes to the realization that with a few simple changes, concise guidance, and transparent straight talk, it's possible for early stage entrepreneurs and founders to avoid the ever so common burnout stage completely and to instead create a work-life harmony that ensures their own personal version of excellence. Recognized by his mantra, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel. Mark's an expert at so many things, and it's an absolute honor to have him here with us to kick off the launch of the Nicole Holland Show. Mark, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much. That's a very nice introduction. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being here. So, we're going to dig into personal branding and how my listeners can come out and have their own personal brand, why it's so important to do some, and some of the fundamental steps to look at before you get started on that. But before we do talk about that, can you first kind of clarify what you call a personal brand?
So, I mean, the word brand is, or the definition of brand has been used and coined so many times, and everyone from Paul Rand to Chris Ducker have said this, and Jeff Bezos, they've all said the same thing, which is your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And there's so many people claim that. But ultimately, it's been around for years and a long time, decades and decades. A personal brand is really just owning that perception of yourself, in my opinion. I mean, if you think about it, I don't know, I think 20 years ago, 30 years ago, a business was doing a lot of inbound marketing. It was doing a hell of a lot more outbound marketing, much more than it was doing any inbound stuff. There was some inbound bits, but it was doing a lot of outbound stuff, probably as its primary focus. And that was kind of nice because you could hide behind the company. You could hide behind the broadcast media. You could hide behind the broadcast marketing. But if you look, start to look at 2005, 2006, 2007, and into 2008 and 2009, when things like Twitter and Facebook really came into play. And the whole social networking boom really kicked in. People suddenly became accountable. They were the faces of things where before they'd not been. They'd kind of, to get to the marketing person at Coca-Cola, for example, was a lot more difficult before social media existed. You had to find them. You had to try and figure out how to get the address and which office are they in, or what's maybe their email address if you've got that. Now it's a lot more different. Things have developed. People are accountable. People are the faces of things. Everything from me saying, actually, views are my own. They're not representative of my employer, right through to people that go on these kind of political rants and right through to the whole Me Too movement and everything that you see. Like, we're all represented in a certain way online. And that is our personal brand. Everything that we do now is just accounted for, and it becomes this perception. So whether you're a business person, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a startup founder, whether you're a career person, you've got a 9 to 5, you have got a personal brand. You're judged based on what is on public record, and actually embracing and actually actively managing a personal brand is sort of the thing that defines where you are probably going to be able to go and what you're probably able to do, and actually what kind of people are going to be attracted to you. So that's the definition of a personal brand for me. It's owning that perception. It's owning all of the beliefs and the views and everything that you put together and bringing them together into something that is cohesive and it's consistent, and actually leaning into it as opposed to just, stepping back from it. So that's what I think a personal brand is.
Awesome. Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm reminiscent of my early days in marketing back when you had to hunt down that person. And I kind of missed that in a way. I don't know. It was a little fun. But yeah, so it's really about just stepping forward and being seen. And for me, and I think for you as well, correct me if I'm wrong, I think authenticity is really important here, where you share with people who you are and what your values are, what you believe in. And because people are able then to connect. Yeah, they're like, they want to do business, especially in such these times that are so like people are in different groups and against and for, and it's like they're looking for those people that are like them. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you attract the people that you will always attract and that you're always going to attract, and you repel the people that are never going to like you anyway. That's the great thing. It acts as a lead scoring tool. Ultimately, the people that inquire or the people that get in touch with you off the back of your personal brand, they are probably much more likely to want to do business with you purely because they have that affinity with you from day one. It's the whole know, like, and trust thing. Well, your personal brand actually gets people up the know and gets them up the like kind of levels, and then the trust part becomes it becomes an interaction thing. But I think the authenticity thing is a bit of it's a funny one, that, because authenticity is one of those words like influencer that's just an entrepreneur. Like, what a pain in the backside that is. Like, it's just a crazy word. It's a word now that really doesn't mean anything. Like, authenticity doesn't mean just going online and swearing and being divisive for no reason. Like, Gary Vee's made a mess of it for all of us because people believe that Gary has this persona, and actually he's just genuinely like that. If you meet him, he's just genuinely like that. People believe that you've got to be like that. You've got to be outspoken. You've got to drop the F-bomb all the time. Like, they believe that that is authenticity, or they believe that they've got to cause a divisive argument or challenge people for no reason. And that is them being authentic, and they'll defend that right to be authentic. And that's not really what it's about. So I think authenticity is just having one message and just believing it, and being open and receptive to other people. And I don't really like the word authenticity in that context. I prefer just honesty and transparency. Authenticity is like this big banner that encompasses all these other traits. We need to just focus on the traits, which are honesty and a bit of transparency and openness, and just a willingness to share and a willingness to listen and be receptive to change and to opinion. So yeah, authenticity, in my opinion, encapsulates all of those things, and the things beneath authenticity are what we should really be focusing on. Because I think authenticity, it can be misused and misunderstood a little bit. So I think that's definitely something to be careful of. You've got to act in a way that is consistent with your personality. You can't have this brand, this personal brand, that is different to how you actually are because you think it'll get more uniques to your website or get more podcast downloads. You can't be that person because suddenly you'll meet people in person at conferences and it won't match up. So if you're gonna do authenticity, you've got to look a little bit deeper than that. So that's the only thing I'd say to that is that
it's got to be actual authenticity. You actually have to be authentic with who you are. Yeah, but I like it down because it has become such a buzzword, and it
really is. Yeah. And I think it's. The people forget that authenticity. I mean, you're right. Yes, you've got to be authentic with it, but you've got to understand what makes you tick with that. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't spend the time to realize what makes them tick. So they can't even be authentic because they don't know why they're doing what they're doing or what they actually believe in. So I think you've got to spend some time understanding what that means for you, and then look at each facet of that. Like, okay, actually, how willing am I to be transparent, and how far am I willing to take that transparency? Because a lot of people, if you think about personal branding, some people call you out for not sharing absolutely every minute detail. And they'll claim that you're not authentic enough because you're not sharing every detail. So you've got to figure out, like, where's the line for these things, which is why I always say you've got to dig a bit deeper. And I think you've got to become a little bit uncomfortable. I think you've got to go a little bit further than you probably think you should do with transparency and openness and honesty and everything that comprises authenticity. But I think at the same time, you've got to find your own safety limits with that one. How far are you willing to go? So it's not as easy as it sounds. I'll be honest. It takes people time to learn that.
Yeah, I think that's really important that, there have to be boundaries, like, especially as you're becoming, I know you use the term audio influencer a lot because you really focus with people on podcasts. And again, another word that's just been so overused and bastardized is thought leader, right? Mm-hmm. Like, thought leader used to mean something. And now it's just used a lot. But I think that whenever we're looking at influencing a tribe or and I'm not talking like my listeners aren't the people that are doing this manipulatively anyhow. So I think we can speak about this in a really authentic or transparent way, that when you're looking to build your influence and impact more people and support more people and build your business, there really have to be those boundaries of what is relevant to share and what's not. And yeah, logorrhea is a bad look. So you definitely don't have to, and you should not. I think I would say you should not. But I'd love your opinion on this. You should not share everything because you're not a Kardashian and you're not on reality TV. And if that's what you want to do, then that's a different conversation. But when you're building your personal brand, having those guidelines is probably one of those early things you want to look at. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to let people in more than you would ordinarily. You've got to let people see a little bit behind the scenes and behind the curtain a little bit. But you've got to make sure that whatever you're doing is for a reason, and it's like, I don't really share too much like super personal stuff, but I'll share a lot more personal stuff than a lot of people will do. And it's a balance. Like, what is this helping these people that are seeing it to do? And one of the baselines with that is that actually it's just helping people get to know me. Like, that is a fine endeavor. If you are focusing on your Twitter and your social profiles, your Instagram profiles, and so on and so forth, if the goal of those things is to just let people see more of you, the person, and get to know you more, if it fits into that like and that no kind of boundary, then fine, share that you walking the dog and that you're with your kids and you're doing these things. That's all cool. But what you can't do is, like, you can't go off about on a personal rant, like the person at the store that let you down because you were waiting too long in line. Like, you can't rant about that. Like, that's not, no one cares about that. That's not helping people get to know you and like you. That's just letting people see that, do you know what, you're a bit of a complainer. And it's you've got to be really careful with that. But at the same time, you can't just curate and kind of make out that your world is perfect. You've really got to just be genuine with what you share. So if you are having a hard time with something, then you can share that and you can tell people about that and you can talk about why you're having a hard time and the lessons that you're learning. But what you can't do is just go on one of those rants that you'd have with someone in person when you've had a couple of drinks and you kind of, you just need that outlet. People aren't interested in that because, you use social media for the very thing that we all hate social media for. And I think there's a very fine line between sharing the right kind of thing and going too far with it. I often find it when you run a business that is personally brand oriented, in particular with sort of podcast websites, when we were, when it relied upon me being at the center of it a lot more, maybe a year ago, we'd find people were becoming way too familiar and asking things that were wildly unfair and then acting really unfairly when we couldn't do what they wanted us to do. And I'm talking unreasonable things, but they thought they could ask those things because they knew of me, they knew of Kieran a little bit more than most of the founders would let them because of the personal branding. And it's if you go too far with it, people stop respecting your boundaries and they stop respecting you as a business person. And you've got to be very careful where those lines are. And that starts, in my opinion, with what you share. How far are you willing to go? So just think to yourself, when you're publishing it, what is this adding value? What is this going to do? And I know it sounds cliche, and like the words adding value, we'll get to this later, like they just bore me to tears. But we have to be just thinking, if I'm publishing this picture of my dog, what does it do? Well, it lets people know that I've got a dog. And most of the time, actually, like when I'm at conferences at FinCon or Podcast Movement, people ask me about the dog. And it becomes an icebreaker. So it's actually really, really useful. So yeah, you just got to be careful. You got to think why you're doing this.
I was laughing so much because cable companies and airlines, like, I don't know anybody who probably has amazing times with them all the time, but sometimes I'll be like, and I'm going to use this as like a lesson for how not to treat your customers or things like that, right? And then I get all fired up and I'll write something and I'll be planning on it. And then I'm like, this does not serve my audience. Like, this is just a personal rant. And so I feel like sometimes that when I put it down, as long as I don't hit send, or like sometimes I'll be like, I'm gonna rant on a video, and then I'm like, oh, that was stupid. Boom, like
Yeah.
that.
We all
So,
do that, and I do it on Twitter all the time. You know, I'm you know, I will do that, and you do think to yourself, I'll just there's no point me sending that, and it's crazy because it barely gets you anyway. If it's a well-reasoned thing,
that's the thing is, I mean, I think that, I don't know, for me, when I'm looking at it, it's like one of the things that I stand for is exceeding expectations and customer service that serves. And it drives me nuts um, when we do business, we have to do business with you know, a selection of businesses that don't care. It's like one of my pulpit things, you know. So but it is that balance of looking at how can I turn this into something that is of value to my audience, so I can use that experience in teaching, or you know, as a demonstration of, but the content has to be around the purpose and the point, rather than, because if I just complain, like you said, I'm just seen as a complainer rather than teach first. So I think sometimes that has to like dial down. And I love that we're having this conversation, because I, as we're recording, am in the middle of rebranding and going from the Business Building Rockstars brand, which is what I've been for the last few years, to now the Nicole Holland brand. And it's scary, and it's like, where do I draw the line of what's appropriate and helpful versus what's just a hot mess?
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it, when you think about that? You know, if you think about Business Building Rockstars, great name, great brand, but ultimately, like, the space is different to when you set that up. You know, now everyone's a rock star or something, or you know, the John Smith in business doing X, and you know, everyone's got these fancy names, and everyone's kind of doing it now. A lot of people in the same kind of space. But you know, if I said to someone, right, okay, business building Rockstars, or anyone's brand, they're probably going to go, oh, that's Nicole, isn't it? You know, that they will instantly just jump to you, the person. That's how it works. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's great to have that brand, and it's great to be, you know, it's like Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income. Like, no one really talks about Smart Passive Income. It's just Pat. You know, I saw an email today from a partner who published something that Pat had done with them. And in the subject line, it literally said Pat Flynn and then XYZ. It wasn't like Smart Passive Income. And, you know, they'd put his name in there in particular because people knew him, the brand of him. And it just so happened that, you know, the SPI was the thing that he created, and he's just not changed it. But if he changed it, would it damage him? Not at all. So you've got to consider that, you know, what is the line? Where is the line? What do you need to share? What don't you need to share? But ultimately, it probably makes no difference. You know, it will not make any difference. You can't
say that, Mark. You can't say that as we're opening the new brand with this.
It won't make a difference because you'll do as well. The only thing that it will do is like what I'm talking about when I say it won't make a difference is it's not gonna change people that already know you. It's the new people that come in. That when you're rifling through the podcast charts, when you're rifling through Twitter and so on and so forth, and you see XYZ rock stars or XYZ such and such and all these different things, you're just one of many. But actually, if they see, okay, Nicole talking about this thing that I actually care about, that's when I'm more likely to stop and listen. So the point that I'm getting at is that the people that already know you, they genuinely won't make a difference. Like, they'll be a little bit good to see the old brand go, but they'll be equally excited to see the new brand come. And people just buy into you. You know, ultimately, it doesn't matter what you call your personal brand. It doesn't matter whether it's your name or whether it's something else. But by being at the center of that brand, you are the common denominator. You will always be that person. So it's kind of like, well, why bother adding something else to the front of it? Why bother adding XYZ with Nicole Holland or with Pat Flynn or with Mark or whatever? You know, why bother? So it's a funny consideration because I think like 4 or 5 years ago, if you look at like some of the big entrepreneurs in the online digital space, you know, you've got people like Pat, you've got JLD, they've got front ends to things. Then you've got someone like Chris Ducker, who's got chrisducker.com and everything run through Chris. And then he created a product, which is Youpreneur, which is very different. Like, the product is Youpreneur, not the brand, the product. So there's a couple of different ways to look at that, but I think as time progresses and as we get more and more people jumping into this space where they can start an online business and where they can become a personal brand pretty easily just by coming on and interviewing people and building an expert status up and building a network up, you'll find more affinity with the people. You know, if a great example of this is Jordan Harbinger. If you look at what Jordan did when he left the Art of Charm, and I had this conversation with him, and he was surprised that I'd said it. I said, "Look, man, that's a ballsy move," because a lot of people would have hidden. They'd have said, "Okay, this is XYZ show, and it's hosted now by Jordan Harbinger." And I congratulated him on this a few different times actually, because I think it is impressive. He actually didn't do that. He came from a knockback, and he stepped back up and came out with Jordan Harbinger show. It wasn't anything else. It was him stepping into that and really owning that. Which a lesser person wouldn't have done. They would have hidden behind something else, another brand. So I think it's being willing to just own your own space. And to me, it's almost an extension of, if you think about, that first time that you like hit record on a video or you hit record on a podcast and then you listen to your voice back. It's weird, isn't it? And you just think to yourself, oh no, do I really sound like that? Well, imagine putting your name on everything as well, like your actual name. Like now I'm Googleable. And holy crap, that's scary. So I think that's where that comes from, a little bit of fear with that. But ultimately, if you change, like you've done and like I'm doing as well, you've got to accept that the people that know that brand that you've already got, they know that it's just you. Like, do you remember? I don't know if you've ever been in this position, but someone once told me when I first started my business, they said, "You've always got to say we instead of I because it makes you sound bigger." And for a long time that worked, but now it doesn't. Like, there's no point saying, okay, we here at Excellence Expected and we here at Business Building Rockstar. Why? There's no point. It's you, it's me. And people are now savvy to that, where 10 years ago, it really did make a difference if you were sending a proposal that said we and our team and all that stuff. But actually, people are buying you. They're a lot more used to working with people. So it's a different landscape to what it was when you and I started out. And, our personal brands were different beasts then. And I think you'll see a lot of people moving to just their name, a lot of people really embracing their personality a little bit more. Because remember as well, like everyone thinks his personal brand lark is a brand new thing. Like, no, it's not. Like George Best, he had a personal brand. Like Freddie Mercury had a personal brand. They've been around for years, personal brands. Jesus, like, he did all right. They've all had personal brands, like, but people are now making out that it's a thing. It's not. It's just now it's easier to get to, and it's just more accepted that it's all right to be you. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Cool. So let's dig in a little bit more on this of the how-to, because for me, when I started, I needed something to be behind. I wasn't ready to be like Nicole Holland. I don't know if you know my background, but many of my listeners know I came from corrections and I was an officer. And before that, I was, foster parent, and I was doing crisis work. So I was dealing with people who were not law followers and not didn't have a happy abundance mindset. Instead, they wanted pain. And so for me, it was a real personal challenge. I had a lot of personal work to do just to even go online and to be a public person. And it took me a good year before I think I was okay with it. Mm-hmm. So I definitely had to stretch. And now I think because I'm more okay with it, and now I'm like, I don't care about any of those people. I don't care. Like, nobody's going to hunt me down. And if they do, I won't know about it. I don't care. So now I'm just like, okay, I can be me. But I've been building up to it. And I remember though, before I was like, okay, I'm ready to like be the face of me and not a cartoon. But back then, not that long ago, just a few years ago, I was terrified. And I've talked with so many people who have extremely successful companies. They've been around for a long time. They've stood the test of time. And maybe it's part the old school marketing, and maybe it's part just a little, imposter syndrome or fear around being found or being seen or letting people in or whatever it is. So can you give us just a few tips for if somebody is like, all right, I'm ready to be more me up front. I'm ready to to let myself take a front seat to the brand, what are some of those first few things that my listeners can do to get clear and comfortable before they just jump in and they're like, here I am? Because I think we both know that doesn't really work. It is strategic, and you do have to do a bit of work and planning before you just before you get legs with your personal brand. And you don't want to make those mistakes. You don't want to make those early mistakes that a lot of people do that aren't strategic about it, eh?
Yeah, and I think interestingly, what you've got to consider is that people are going to understand you anyway. People are going to get to know that it's you in the long term, because to be able to buy from you, they've got to know a little bit about you. They've got to get to know you and like you, and they've got to trust you with the cash that they're going to be investing in themselves, or that they're spending with you on your products or your services or whatever. So like, they are going to understand that it's you behind this. And so they're going to get to know you, and they're going to understand that you're the one that's doing business. So if you cultivate and curate this persona and this brand online that isn't actually you, then when people get to you and they get to know you, that's when people have to go through the knowing and the liking again. And they've got to learn to understand, actually, do I like this person? Because it's not like the brand seems, you know? So that's the first thing to consider, is that ultimately, like, people are going to get to you. People are going to find you. If they want to, they can. And once you accept that, you realize that there's no real escaping it. So you may as well be strategic about it. You may as well, actually, as you said, put out content that plays to your values. And it's better to let someone see 50% of the actual you than it is to let them see 100% of something that's not quite there. So I think that's the first thing, is just understand that people will find you. The second thing is, you've got to, most people, when they put something of themselves online, is they're worried about people coming at them personally, and they're worried about having to defend themselves. I think you've got to switch that around. And one of the big mistakes that I see people making is that they don't have a strong opinion on something. Like, in your industry, whatever you're doing, whatever you're putting out there, you have to have an opinion on that thing. Like, no one remembers the person that's quiet and is meek and that doesn't say anything and doesn't raise points and doesn't argue points of contention. People remember those, right or wrong, that are fighting for something, that have got an opinion, they've got a cause, that believe in something. So that's what you've got to understand, is that you've got to have an opinion, and it's that that's defensible, not you. People are never coming after you, the person. They're always coming after your opinion. Now, that's not to say that opinion has to be rigid. You've got to be open to the facts. You've got to be open to change and development and personal progress. But ultimately, you've got to stand on one side of some fence. You know, figure out what is that part in your industry. Like with me, with podcasters, I believe that each indie podcaster can do more with their own personal brand and become that influencer, versus a lot of people say, well, you just need sponsorship. If you don't do that, you failed. You know, I don't believe that that's the case. And that's my opinion. That's the thing that I defend. It's not me. Like, no one comes at me, the person. It's crazy. Like, why would they do that? It's a waste of their time. So they will only ever come at that opinion, at which point I have content, and I've got an arsenal of things where I can defend it. But also, it's all right to have other opinions. So actually, there is nothing to defend. So, like, all these fears that you've got suddenly, they're just dissipated. They're just, you don't have them, like, because what is the risk? There is no risk. So you've got to have the opinion. And you've got to understand that people they're going to understand that it's you behind the scenes anyway. And then the thing that you've got to do is you just got to decide, actually, what can I do consistently to tell people that opinion? That is it. That's all you need to do. It's just blogging. It's podcasting. It's YouTube. It's, what is it? It could be Instagram TV. That's all you need. You don't need to be doing loads. Just pick one thing and do it, and just get that opinion out there. And then suddenly you're the person that's known for that thing. And it's got to be consistent. It takes some time. But the mistakes that people generally make are usually based around one of those things: a lack of consistency, a lack of opinion, or a lack of realization that ultimately, regardless of what you call it or how you pitch it, they will find out that it's you. And there's nothing to be scared of. So yeah, most mistakes fall into those categories, in my opinion.
Awesome. Thanks. So if let's role play here, maybe role play, I don't know. So if somebody were to come to you and they have a company that a SaaS, so you're SaaS, so they have a SaaS company, and they put out a solution for business owners to be more productive online, let's say.
Mhm.
So the company has been doing well because people understand the product and how it helps them. They've done a great job at marketing that. So how can somebody from behind the scenes, the founder, as the company is growing, how can that founder get their personal brand out there? Like, how would you suggest they go about maybe not transitioning, because what they're doing for the company and for the brand of the platform is already great and it's rocking and rolling, but now maybe they want to have more influence, maybe they have a bigger mission, they want to do philanthropy or something like that. How would you suggest that founder, I don't know if the word is transitions or ads, or what can you share about that?
So I think it depends on their goal. You know, if your goal is to sell more of the SaaS product, I'll equate this to like a personal trainer. Would you ever buy personal training from a fat personal trainer? Probably not. So if the goal is to sell more SaaS, then that founder's job, if that the whole point of the personal brand is to sell more of the SaaS product, then you've got to understand that you've got to show that you are a productive person. That is it. And that somehow, somewhere, your product plays into that. It doesn't all have to be about the product, but it's got to play into that mix. You've got to kind of practice what you preach on that one. So that's the first thing. You know, if your goal is to build a personal brand that sells something that you're also working on, then you've got to show how that thing is working with you.
Let me throw something else into the mix there. So this founder, yes, is a productive person. And this founder, in addition to philanthropy and thought leadership, has lots and lots of ideas, because what founder doesn't? So they have lots of ideas of different products that they want to create. So just throw that in the mix there too.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so again, it depends on the goal. If the goal is to be productive, then to show how productive they are to sell their software via the personal brand, then you need to lead other people who are other users of your software into the mix. So what you got to be really careful of there is that you're not teaching people how to be like you are. So if I just for 1 second turn that around, like my goal with my personal brand is to teach people how to be better owners of businesses and small businesses and founders of startups and so on. So I tell people how I'm running my business so that those guys can see behind the scenes. In this scenario, the founder couldn't do that, because that assumes that actually the only person that they're helping is other founders. You know, you can't do that. So what you got to understand is that if you're trying to sell your software or your product via a personal brand, you've got to sell to the people that want to be sold to. And that might not be the type of content that you want to create. So let's assume this person can shave off 1 hour a day of time for a teacher or for a builder or for an entrepreneur. Like you have to create content for those guys via your personal brand. So you then become the expert in helping teachers shave 1 hour off their day and gain 365 hours a year back. And suddenly your software is sponsoring the podcast and the brand and the blog and so on. And you know, that's how that all ties together. So that's assuming your goal is to sell your kit, is to sell your stuff. If it's not, if it's to give you a way to have sort of another brand that's your creative outlet, or is maybe a backup for things, or gives you another revenue stream that you can invest elsewhere, or that you can invest even back into your business. Like most of my revenue that I bring into my personal brand, I actually invest in R&D and research and traveling and so on for the SaaS business. So you've got to then comprehend that if you are doing that, you have to focus your content entirely on what you want to be doing forever. So if you're selling your SaaS, then it's got to be focused on helping people who might be in that area. But if it's for you and you're running it alongside another business, you've got to make sure that you're building something that you enjoy doing, because this personal brand might outlive you. It could feasibly, you could be the Zig Ziglar of your entire industry. So it outlives you. So you got to be sure that if you're going to be doing this for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, that you can keep doing it, that you can be consistent and creative and enjoy it. So in that case, you can't sell your product. You've got to sell other things, and you've got to talk about other things. So to kind of go back to the question, you've got to define, like, what's the point in the personal brand? And you alluded to it in your question, Nicole, which was actually, how do I, and this is the key difference. One, is it diversify? Or two, is it add to what I'm already doing? And that's the real core goal. Now, I'll give you an example of that. When I was running my brand and design agency, my personal brand was a very clear diversification. I was there in the agency. It was doing well. It was good business, but actually I moved over there to do my own thing. Take that into the podcast websites realm and the SaaS realm that I'm in. Actually, the personal brand is still there, but now it's supportive of that business. Yeah, so you've got to figure out what are the goals of it, and they will allow you to set that strategy up that you talked about earlier.
Cool. And your personal brand, so Mark Asquith?
Well, my personal brand, it was, depending on when this is launched, I think it's January, isn't it? This one, we're in January right now. So this is, it will now be markasquith.com. It was previously Excellence Expected, which I built up for 4 years. And then very recently, just like you, changed that to my own name.com.
So happy about that. I can't do my own name.com because I let it go like 20 years ago and an insurance company bought it. And it's not something I can get back now. So the Nicole Holland.
Gutted. I can't believe that you let it go. Do you know, mine was...
okay, you can't believe I let it go back in the days where like the internet was still like, it was, who knew? I don't know.
I'm anal enough to keep that one though. I'd have been like, yeah, I'll keep that one just in case. Mine actually came up. I bought mine in a pub. Sorry to jump in. Mine was not available for years. And then one day in 2016, I was like, I wonder if it is, while I was drunk. And it was. So I bought it. It was like 10 quid. And I just bought it there. And then I was like, no way. Just total potluck.
That's crazy. Well, I don't think that Northwest Mutual or whatever the company is that owns it now is going to let it go, but I do check regularly. But yeah, who knew? I didn't know. I had no idea back then. I thought it was probably like 20 years ago I let it go. So I love that you are not, although I'm sure you're going to keep excellence-expected.com, but I'm so glad to hear that it's going to be Mark Asquith. Mark Asquith, because I think that when people meet us now, it's like they just, do the Google, like the name, if they want to find out more, if we don't exchange cards or whatever. And then when you have your name as your URL, then it's easy to pop up. Like that's your main place, as long as you're putting out the content and doing all the things, right? So your decision to go from Excellence Expected to Mark Asquith, what does that entail? Because I think there's going to be people listening who are like, they've been putting all the work in and they've been the voice of the brand. They've been the face of the brand and all of that. But they have also maybe been thinking, I just would like to just use my name. It's not just like, oh, okay, I'm going to start using my name. It takes time to do some transition. Yeah.
Yeah, I think from the technical side of things, this is where I was always very careful that I built all of my social profiles under myself. So all of my social profiles are at Mr. Asquith. The Mark Asquith one was gone actually from those. But I built up just at Mr. Asquith all the time. Everything legit is just Mr. Asquith. So I don't have like an Excellence Expected Twitter or Instagram, or there might be a Facebook page maybe. So that was very fortunate for me because I didn't have to do much transitioning on social. That was quite nice. But yeah, I mean, you've got a heck of a lot of technical aspects to do. Your website is the big one, obviously. You need to make sure all the redirects are in place, the 301 redirects for Google to maintain your SEO juice. There's a heck of a lot of consideration there, making sure that everything's just sorted on the technical side. And that's probably the biggest job that you're going to do. And at that point, you're probably going to be doing things like content audits, getting rid of some of the stuff that you've done in the past that doesn't quite fit. But you've also got like the announcement side of things. Like I've now teased it out to my audience on my podcast. I'm teasing it out on my free coaching on Fridays that we're going to be doing this kind of launch of markasquith.com. And, it's something that I'll be writing a big blog post about and why I've done it and so on and so forth. The SEO side, the Googling side is probably less of a problem because people search for me and Excellence Expected comes up anyway because my name's on every single podcast and there's 700 of them and they're on every blog post and there's hundreds of those. And so that's kind of less of a problem, but it's more maintaining that SEO goodness that you've already got. So you've got like technically it has to be super solid. You certainly can't just create another website and be like, well, I'm turning this one off. You just can't do that. That'd be just taking you back to the beginning, which is silly.
Well, thank you. Okay, so we have a little bit more time left, but I wonder if you can give us a couple things. So I'm going to throw it all at you right now. So 3 top tips for if you're thinking about starting, transitioning to a personal brand, what to do first and foremost, or the most important things, 3 things. Number 2, where my audience can continue the conversation with you. And number 3, any final words of wisdom?
So top 3 things to do. You've got to figure out what you're trying to achieve with this personal brand. Is this supporting something else that you're doing? Or is it just giving you an outlet to be creative for yourself? And do you want to make the money off it sooner rather than later? Because if you don't want to make the money soon, you've actually got a heck of a lot more flexibility because you can be really creative with that stuff. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you've got to form an opinion of something. You've got to be super comfortable really going out there and being in that opinion space and being able to be maybe a little bit divisive and a bit contrarian and being able to factually and emotionally and ethically be able to defend that position. That's the second thing. The third thing is, it kind of alludes to something I mentioned earlier, which is this whole I'm going to add value thing. Like, that is so boring. You can't just, so many people will say, yeah, I start my personal brand to add value. That's a baseline. It is dull. It is so unbelievably dull. It's like a plumber turning up at my house and say, well, my goal is to be a plumber, is to do the pipes, is to install this bathroom. Like, that's a baseline, man. To call yourself a plumber, you need to be able to do that stuff. So to add value, it's not a USP. So what you've got to do is you've got to add an element of entertainment in there. You've got to find a way to harness that personality. Like people like Andrew and Pete do it in such a creative way. People are for some reason attracted to me because I am pretty straight talking. I swear a heck of a lot, and people find that a little bit refreshing. But I'm very, very to the point, and for some reason people are drawn to that. So that's my entertainment thing, So you've got to focus on being entertaining. The value will come because it's all in your head. It's impossible for you to not be valuable. It's virtually impossible to do that because you're already really good at what you do. By virtue of getting to the point where you think, I want to start a personal brand and build that brand, like, you already have that value in your head. It's impossible for that to not come out. So focus on the entertainment. So they're the 3 things that I'd suggest. Continuing the conversation. The easiest way is come to my free coaching. So every Friday, 4 p.m. UK, 11 a.m. Eastern time, I just do a Facebook free coaching every single week. I've done it like hundreds of times now. So everyone can just come to that. It's totally free. I don't even need your email address. Just come to that. And that's at, if you just do a search for Mark Asquith or Excellence Expected and click on free coaching, you'll find all that. And then what was the third thing?
The third thing is your final words of wisdom.
Oh, yeah. The words of wisdom that I'd say is that most people put off from personal branding for a number of reasons. Number one, the main reason, in my opinion, is that they're scared of doing this. Scared of like talking into a mic or writing or putting an opinion out. That's fine. It's okay to do that. So you don't have to dive in and you don't have to go deep to start with. Just start creating something small regularly. That might even be just an Instagram story. Just start doing something small and consistent. And then the second thing that so many people just get so befuddled by is that they'll focus on all of the technology. They'll focus on these $97 or these $47 a month discounts that, it was $2,000 yesterday and now it's on offer at $297. And they'll think that buying the tech and all the gear is what they need to have a personal brand. That is not the case. So you don't need to do that. And then the last word of wisdom is going to be, most people get put off if they believe that someone else is doing what they're doing, that they're in the space. Take that as a massive positive, because if someone else is making money from it, you can make money from it. Or if someone else has an opinion and building an audience from it, then you can have an opinion and build an audience from it. So if someone else is doing it, actually use that as encouragement. There's a market there to be had. So don't be put off by other people doing something which is the same as what I'm doing. Because by being a personal brand, that is actually the only USP you've got. Like, no one has got the mix of skills and experience and knowledge and values and humor and challenges and problems and backstory and future plans that you've got. So actually, probably for the first time ever in any business that you've ever been in, you've got a genuine USP. So you can do whatever you want as long as you overlay you into it. So don't be worried about other people doing it.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom and helping us out today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.